Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, thank you. So again, thank you for coming here. I know it's the last session of the day. I know everyone's kind of tired. We're going to try to pep it up with a little bit of Doctor Who. So let's get into it. So we are going to do an introduction to Celery, a distributed task queue. This is me. Okay, cool. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Celery, if you didn't already know that. We're going to talk about what it's good for. We're going to talk about how to set it up. And we have a little bit of demos. So hopefully the demo gods are with us today and everything will go well. And we do have some resources for you at the end. So if you want to level up your Celery knowledge, you could go ahead and do that too. And also, see, the doctor has Celery too. So he's in the game. Yeah, and just a side fact, the reason why we incorporate Doctor Who is there is this character of the Doctor, and he regenerates. There's many versions of this Doctor, and the 5th version actually walked around with a piece of celery on their coat. So we were like, well, might as well. Let's bring those two worlds together. Yeah, why not? He was alert, really? That's what the celery's for. When it turned colors, it told him when he was in trouble. Oh. Thank you. So this is Jessica Dene Earley. She's the director of part-time education at Hackbright. Woo! And then this is James Junhyuk. He is my husband. That's why we have similar last names, but he's also the developer advocate for Clover. Yay! Yay, Clover! And we actually have a YouTube show called DevelopHerDevelopHim. Mind you, we haven't put anything on there for the last year, but there's good stuff though. I promise. More to come. And we also have some swag up here, stickers and pins. So at the end, if you want to come and grab some, we have those too. Yeah, and our DevelopHerDevelopHim is geared towards an introductory level of person. So we do a lot of what does it mean to get into the tech industry? How do you start up working with different APIs? And it's more of that level. So in that vein, we're also doing, of course, this talk where it's an introduction to Celery. Let's get into it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, because it's Doctor Who, we want to just show proof that, yes, we really like this. For those who enjoy Doctor Who, there's a conference down in LA, which is the largest Doctor Who conference. There's Missy, for those who would recognize her. She's awesome. Yeah, I just really wanted to show a picture of us. That's the only point for that. Okay, so Celery. What is this thing that we're going to be talking about? And the definition that you find on Google is that it is an asynchronous task queue, job queue, based on distributed message passing. So we'll let that soak in for a moment. And if you're kind of like this, you're in the right spot. Because we're going to be talking a little bit about how to actually use this thing. If the description of what Celery is, if that made sense, then it might be a little too much of a review, and that is A-okay. We're aiming for the person who's like, what the heck is this, and how would I use it? So in other words, what Celery is, it's a task queue that focuses on real-time processing, while it also supports scheduled support. Which, yay, that's a little more Englishly, but I would love for at the end of this, everyone to be like, yeah, I get this. So let's jump right in. First thing is to make sure that we all understand what a task queue is. And task queues are used to distribute work across other threads or machines. These units of work are called tasks, and you would have a worker who would be performing and monitoring all of these work that's happening. So task queues manage this, work is happening, we're going to dive a little deeper. So when a task is triggered, Celery, which is part of your application, sends a message to a broker for work to be done. These tasks can be triggered by web requests, by other tasks, so a task can trigger another task, as well as being on a schedule. So, I like visuals. This is a nice little visual representation, where you'll have a user who makes a request to your application, and from that you can have that request trigger a Celery task to get some work done, which means you could send a nice quick response to the user for them, from their perspective, things are happening. Even though you have work that still needs to be done, it doesn't have to be interrupting your user experience. You can set up a schedule where it calls itself, and RabbitMQ, which we're going to go into a little bit detail soon, will call different Celery workers, and those workers are actually doing the work for you.
Okay, slow down. Okay. So you threw words at me, nice pictures at me, Doctor Who at me.
Yes.
Like, where do I use this? Where do I see Celery?
Oh, it's like you know the future.
I do.
I love it.
Oh, look. Oh.
Yeah, so the big why. Why would you use Celery? What's the purpose of this? One of the main reasons you would use Celery is, let's say you have a user making a request on your application, and there's a lot of work that needs to happen that you don't want necessarily your user to have to wait. So let's say they are writing a blog post. They write a blog post, they are submitting it, and instead of making them wait so you could put it into the database, update your search index of that database, and doing all these other processes, you could just send a nice response back, let your Celery manage that work for you. So again, this will be helpful for your user, as well as it's not intended to, but it's used often as cron jobs, so you could have it scheduled. So every night it does a reindexing of a certain aspect. You could have it on a schedule to do work so you don't have to worry about it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I got it.
Cool.
So, brokers, they do deals, right? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, so your broker needs to be able to manage tasks. So what would happen is, let's say I'm the application and he's my broker. I would tell him, hey, here's this task, do it. And then what would you do?
And I would turn to no one, as people, workers, and tell them to do stuff if they were here.
Well, you could pretend they are workers.
Workers, go
right?
do stuff.
Just they're doing things for you.
Cool, I like that.
If we had that power, great. Anyways, so a broker will be handling that component, not your actual application. So here's some examples of some brokers that Celery recommends. The two major ones is RabbitMQ and Redis. RabbitMQ is stable. Celery does recommend it as like, this is the one you should be using. Redis is also highly used as well. There are other brokers that you can use, but Celery does suggest these are the two that we know that work really well, but by all means, you guys are developers, feel free to do what you want. I personally chose RabbitMQ over Redis because I was like, well, Celery, Rabbit, you feed the Celery to the rabbit, like that made sense to me. So that's what we're doing today. Fair?
Let's do it. So here are some useful links for RabbitMQ, and we're gonna show this fancy site. Ooh.
Ooh, yeah. So RabbitMQ is an open source message broker. Apparently 10 years, which is really nice.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Their getting started is really easy. You just download these files and just put them in the repo that you'll be working from. You can also do other ways of installing. It's fairly simple, easy, which is nice. But wanted to show if you're going to be using this tutorial, this type of page is the page you want to see.
Okay. So we got the Rabbit now. Now we have to get the Celery. So how do you install Celery?
Yes. So with Celery, you just have to use pip, which is fantastic. So just pip install Celery. You get all the things that you need. So there's two things you just need is RabbitMQ and then pip installing Celery. I don't think we need to demo that because hopefully everyone has pip installed once. And if you haven't, that's okay. Talk to us after.
And we just had this whole session about packages last.
That was great.
So.
Cool. So now demo time.
Here we go.
Yeah. Let's see. You might have to. Yeah. Do you want to? Wait. Where am I? I swear I had all this ready. Let us start off with. So I have this repo that only has tasks in it. So I think I have that open already. Yep. So here's my tasks.py file. From Celery, I'm importing Celery. There's some configurations that I'm doing, and that I'm going to be looking to the tasks directory. So my Celery is knowing where to actually go for its tasks. And then I use the app operator to assign a task. This one is a really simple one, super complex. It's an add function. So it's just adding two numbers together, and it's going to return the sum of that value. Is there any questions on this code. It's just a function with a decorator. That way Celery knows. Cool. I'm sorry? So what's happening here is you're making an instance of, oh, thanks, let me hold that. Yeah. You're making an instance of Celery, and what's going to happen is it's going to just call this function of add, and we're going to just return a sum. So, excuse me? This is the task. So this is the, I'm going to tell him to do a task, and then he's going to get the worker. The worker is going to do this one little simple function. Yes. Yes, we have, so with a broker, you could connect it to a database, and it'll make, using Celery will make a database for you. So you could save all of your task information.
Yeah, so that is actually the URL to Rabbit, who divvies out all the work to the workers that we provide from Celery. So if the AMQP, that was really tough. AMQP is actually like the URL path to RabbitMQ. And if you're using Redis or something else, then you put that URL in there to direct that.
Awesome, thanks. Cool. So, oh, no. Cool, so we have that. I'm going to give this back to you. Thank you. So first things first is we're going to need to start up our, I'm in here. I'm in my Rabbit directory. We're going to just have to start our Rabbit server. Can everyone see that? Cool. Do, do, do. We should have like little music going on.
Do, 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 do.
Ah, okay. I'm going to make this a little smaller so you could see the cute little, that's a rabbit. You guys could see, yeah, rabbit. Just my file path is a little long. So I have my Rabbit running. And now I'm going to jump over to here. And I think I have it saved. And if I don't, that's a horrible, horrible thing. Yep. Haha. Nope, not that one. Yeah, no, it's. Right? Live demoing. Oh, embarrassing. It's on. It might be on the other one. Okay. Yeah. Aha. I should have moved that. Yeah. We have 3 demos, so it's been hard to kind of keep all of them in my head. So we're going to run Celery -A and then task worker. Thank you. So now my Celery is up and going. Here it is. So we have Rabbit on one side. I have Celery going, and then I'm going to have another one here. And this is that file that we talked about with the actual tasks. So I'm going to run Python. I'm going to import from tasks, import add, which is the function that we built. And then if I do add.delay, and I pass in 1, 1. Oh, I should. I'm sorry. Oh, 1, 2. Thank you. It's doing one action. I'm just setting one task, and I just want to jump over to Celery, so you guys could see that Celery has been added, and it's doing the work. And here it is, 3. So you have 3 different terminals open. You have your Rabbit going, your Celery going, and then your actual application that's calling the information. Rabbit's right here, and Rabbit is not giving it any output. What you get back is an async result. So with that, that's a nice little object that you can ask, are you ready? Let's say you have multiple things that you're running asynchronously, because that's the point of it. You have lots of things going on. Then you'll be able to do other actions, asking if it's ready, if it's completed, what's the status of it as well. And if you do connect it to a database, if it's ready in the database as well. So that's a very simple example. Cool. So in the slides, we just have this is what you need in regards to be able to use Celery codefully. Now, with Celery, you can also add a heartbeat, and this is where it gets a little more interesting, a little more fun. We're going to be using the example of Doctor Who. Hands raised. Yes, you call it with dot delay. That will add the task to the broker. So then it will actually run it.
That's part of Celery. It's one of Celery's functions for the tasks to, I'll go a little bit more into it of what other functionality you could do, but delay is to actually trigger to make the work to happen.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you an example of using a heartbeat. A heartbeat is using a schedule. So we're going to tell Celery, do this action every so much time. Yeah? And this is where it gets a little more interesting. I'm going to leave my Rabbit running. I'm going to stop this Celery. And I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to open up this other task file and just read quickly what is going on. So again, I'm still importing from Celery tasks. I am using a lambda to add a suffix, so I'll explain what that is when we get there. Again, we're going to use the the decorator of tasks, and this function is going to be called FavDoctor. So for those who are not familiar with Doctor Who, generally whenever you're watching the show, this character regenerates several times. And so it's the same character, but played by different actors. And every time you have a new person or a new doctor, you're kind of like, I don't know if I really like this doctor. This is my favorite, the current one, because you know this doctor. And then over time, you start to get to know the new doctor, and you're like, oh my gosh, no, I really love this doctor instead. So some of the Doctor Who fans, I'm seeing a little bit of nodding of like, yeah. So I'm mimicking that action of you're watching something, and as it's going on, you're like, oh, this is something I really love. So I have just a really simple file that I am opening, and I'm going to be reading the file, and I'm going to be printing out something. I know most of you guys could read all this, so please act surprised when I run it. And then I'll be iterating over the rest of the file to be displaying something else, and then I'll be writing to this file. For this one, what's more interesting is the configuration. So Celery is going to need something a little more meaty in regards to be able to set that schedule. So there's a Celery Beat scheduler, and it's a dictionary that you give it a name, and so I thought doctor every 10 seconds is a fine name. Then you're going to set the key of tasks, and the value is going to be task.FavDoctor, which is in the tasks module, and it's the name of the function, Dr. FavDoctor. And then we're going to set the schedule on it, and we're going to have it for every 10 seconds to perform this task. Go back here. Nope. This way. There we go. So my Rabbit is going. I am going to run. Oh, did I delete it? Wait, and I just need to change this to tasks. Cool. Oh, well, if I was in my environment, that would be helpful, right? Okay, pretend that didn't happen. Pretend that didn't happen. How about that? Yeah, I'm trying to run my Celery. Yeah, no, appreciate it. No.
That darn demo god.
I know, and I was so prepared too. Okay, how about this? How about if you guys want to, I will promise I will show you this. We have another demo, so I can always sneak in the back and just make sure I have it written right. No, I have it written on there.
Cool, so we'll come back to the heartbeat demo. So I have like a maze demo. So I need to build some imagery for this. So talking about Doctor Who, there's many, many journeys and many, many things that he does. So he goes on these chases, he gets chased by monsters, and sometimes he falls into these situations where he has to get out and escape. So keep that imagery in your head, and the plan is to have him run through a maze. So I am going to, I guess I can use Jessica's rabbit. We'll keep the rabbit. I will start my celery.
Yeah, yours works.
Mine works. And then, can I have some assistance? Thank you. Okay, so from here, I will create this maze that's the Doctor and maybe some monsters are going to run through. So create maze, import, create maze. And I need to pull in my celery, which is called my celery, as you can see. From there, I am going to, what did I want? Actually, I have this. Import, run. Oh, no. Not run through, run them. Oh. Oh. Oh.
Yeah,
there we go. So from there, I can do run 2. And then from there, I can make 2. I can create the maze. Let's give it something short and sweet. Let's make it like a 10 space kind of maze for them to run through. And I have them running. And if my celery is listening, boop, boop. I guess my celery doesn't like to be run. You know what? I am going to have your
yeah, don't mind.
rabbit go to sleep, maybe. Cool.
So the funny thing is, literally like 2 sessions earlier, we ran through all of this and we were totally ready. And we're like, cool. So the session before, we're like, we could watch this. This is great. We're going to be fine. Yeah.
And your rabbit, the rabbit is already running, so I'm just going to pull my computer real quick.
Sure. Live demos.
So I'm going to import my create maze again on this computer. And then I'm also going to pull in, what was that run? My rabbit is running. And also my celery is up and running. So from there, I'm going to do that. So create maze. like all great demos, it doesn't work when you need it to. So instead, let me kind of break it down. So I have my magical editor here. So my function, as you can see, I am doing run to, and I'm using the dot delay that we kind of talked about that Celery has. So within my Celery, the task is to go through maze go. So that's what it's being called, and I will show what maze go has. So my idea was I would create this maze of doors, pretty much, true and falses. They can either go left or they can go right. Here is where I'm creating my maze. And in my head, as they go through, if they hit a dead end, they would immediately teleported to the very front again and immediately wipe their memory, so they don't know what they chose. So they're going through this maze randomly going, okay, I'm just going to choose one way or another and just running through. So with that, they're going through the maze, they're trying very hard, and when they're actually running through, I put it in an asynchronous call to actually go through the maze. And if my magical thing was working, we would actually see something working. But yeah. Anyway, so I try to get it working again. But some things we can do while they are going through the maze is, as you can see, the asynchronous task that Jessica was talking about earlier. I capture that into a variable, and I can actually call other things to it. So what I did here was call ready, and that would tell me a true or false statement going like, hey, I am done going through this task, I am finished, and you could get the details or the results from it. And that's what Jessica was talking about. If you want to keep the results and things like that, you can take that, actually store it into a database so you know things are done or things have happened. So the idea is they would continuously run through this maze until they actually get to the finish line. And once they have gone through the finish line, I can get that result, and the result I wanted to get was how long it took them to actually go through. So if you can see here, I'm just keeping a track of number of tries of them running through the maze. And yeah, so yeah, go ahead. So that's a great question. The question is, when we see the dot delay for using this with Celery, what does that mean? Does that mean like will it delay a certain amount of time? So delay actually queues it up immediately to happen immediately. There is also, if you look at Celery's documentation, there is the thing starts with async, and you can actually give it more variables in there. And more parameters in there to specify like, oh, wait to a certain time. If you want to schedule it, you can also do that too. So there is a separate async one, so you can actually have a delay. But delay means immediately. Yeah. Okay. And then this is not ready. You are saying why both are not ready? Correct. So what I'm doing here is I just wanted to pretty much pause this function until someone is done with their maze. So that's what I'm doing. So this t.ready of that asynchronous call will actually give me a true or false if that function has been done. So if it's still doing the work, it will tell me false. If it's done doing the work, it will tell me true. So when it was true, I would want to stop going through having someone run through the maze and give me actually a result. So the idea was they would run through the maze, they would come back and go, okay, cool, the racer T wins because he went through first, or racer Y wins because he went through first. So t.ready would return a true when that Celery worker is complete. Correct. 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 And the dot get is to actually get the results, like whatever gets returned. Not that it's ready to do the work, it's done. Correct.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. Perfect explanation. So just to make sure everyone heard that, the dot ready actually tells when it's done, not when it's ready to do the work. Yeah, question. So the workers actually live on where Celery is. So wherever you're running Celery, it does that. The Rabbit is actually just a broker to tell when things should run in, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So wherever you're running your Celery, so when you do, if you're manually running it, if you're calling it, and with the heartbeat, it calls itself. Let's say you have a web request and you could call that function, it will trigger the Celery. So if you're going to so the question is, if you're checking like your database every second for a piece of data, then you would want to put a heartbeat on it and have it where it will check the database, check if it's there, and then call any other functions or any other tasks that you want to do after you know it's there. And that would be its own. If you're checking, you can connect Celery straight to your database. If you're just checking a database, so
essentially, everything could live its own machine if you wanted to. It's just a matter of making sure, at least communication-wise, you know how to do that portion. Yeah, let me clean it up a little bit. It will be there. And our introductory video on Celery with Jessica's code for the heartbeat and stuff like that is actually already online, and it worked. Yeah, we'll share it to everyone.
Yes, definitely. Do you want to go back to the slides?
Yeah, we can go back to the slides.
Do you have them? Thank you all for your patience, because, you know, as much as you feel uncomfortable and kind of pity for us, like, being up here, we're like, ouch, we literally went through this, we swear. And we were joking about how we purposely decided to do YouTube videos because we couldn't control the atmosphere. So I was like, oh my gosh, baby, let's do this. It'll be a lot of fun. The first thing, of course, he said, because he's more realistic, was, what happens if the demo goes bad? It's like, no, we'll be fine. So, yay. I swear, it's a lot easier than what it looks like up here. Okay, so obviously we did not do it justice. Like, just putting that on the table. But what's really, really nice is that there's lots of tutorials and articles as well. If you don't believe us and don't want to check our YouTube video, that's more than okay. But Full Stack Python has this whole section on Celery, as well as it has several tutorials. What's really nice is those tutorials also show them being connected to different frameworks. So if you're using Django, it has its own library that is specified for that. Flask doesn't need it, which is really nice. But almost every framework that Python, well, the majority, the big ones, they have some type of support, as well as deployment, which might be a better reference for the gentleman in the front in regards to deploying Celery as well. The aim and purpose of this was just say, hey, this is a thing and it is fun. Hopefully we've made it a little more fun with Doctor Who.
And again, thank you. So this is Jessica, Dene Earley-Cha, and I am James Cha Early. Thank you, everyone.
So at this time, we'll take some questions. I'll walk around with the microphone, and we'll just get started.
Could you show your config file that you had? There was a particular question I had there. If you look at your config, you'll notice that there's a tuple, but it looks like there's no comma at the end. So did you mean T, comma A, comma S, comma K, comma S, or did you mean that to be a list? When you have a single, is that?
Which line?
The character you're on right now, there's a very, yeah. Did you mean that?
Yes.
Oh, cool. That might actually make things work too.
Thank you.
Our Rabbit node went wild and is like gone crazy, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's run free and it's going wild.
Yeah, so I noticed in the maze one, you're doing kind of like a while true loop. Is there kind of other approaches to that? Like, because that's going to block, right? But maybe was that just like for the demo, or are there like other?
Well, they're asynchronous tasks, so they're just running anyway, right? So they're not going to hinder your main flow. So yes, specifically for the demo, I made it to continue doing it until find a solution. So when I was testing it last night, I was like, oh, I'll make my maze to be like 10,000 and see how long that takes, and it took forever. So I tried to do a reasonable demo with 10, but the rabbit got loose on that one, the computer too. So.
Can I follow up with that? So is there like a best practice to see like how jobs are, what their progress is like?
Yes. So you could either there is a, I think it's called Flower. There is a Python library to do that, to actually keep track of what your workers are doing and what state they're at and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to advocate, you mentioned the Django, their Django integration product, which is really nice with Django Celery, that they're really kind of common tasks of add emails to send to this Django model table, it'll suck them off, see the results in the Django admin. So for those kind of really common sweet tasks, fire off, and feel free to build to that system. So it's a really nice integration product.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Yeah, Joel's saying there's a lot of great integration products with using Django and seeing the results of, like, if you're trying to use it for sending emails out, you can see the results in the Django admin portal too. So there's a lot of great integrations with Celery.
Yeah, so the main use case, so it's not entirely clear to me. What is it a matter of if you have lots of processes and you can use lots of computers to run different processes, so you're distributing the computation? Is that the whole point of Celery?
So it's not the main. So if you look at actually what Celery says, like distributed computing is not the main purpose of Celery. It's the matter of essentially putting a bunch of tasks into a queue to get done. If you wanted like churn through like images to like do something with, or if there's lengthy tasks to be done, you want to use it for that. But essentially, because of how Celery works, you can do distributed computing. It's just not intended for it.
Hold on 1 second. Because we're recording this, so we want to get all the questions.
Oh, sure, yeah. My stupid question also. Okay, so the Celery and the broker should run on the same machine?
No, they can be in separate environments completely.
Separate environments means they could be on two disparate machines, one in India, one here? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, yeah. Like when Jessica was going through the list of like potential brokers, like AWS is not meant to like run on your local computer. It's a web service. So you can connect to it by saying where that broker lives.
Okay, and then we talked about the broker and the Celery can be on different machines. What about the worker threads? They can also, or they?
That I'm not too familiar with, actually. This is a great question. And
no, I'm just trying to understand, because you said Celery invokes the worker threads to do the work, right?
Correct.
It'll tell them to do the work.
Yeah,
so where do they run?
Yeah, they would run wherever your Celery is at.
Okay, they will run on the Celery machine then.
Yes, all Rabbit's doing is just handling the messaging in the queue.
Okay, and Celery is reading from the queue and and spawning them off.
And spawning, yes. Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Can this be used if you have multiple queues? If you have like more than one queue? Sorry, very stupid.
You would need most likely more than one. Yeah, I would say you would need most likely. Yeah, you would need more because no, because if are you asking, like you're having different types of tasks? So if you're having different types of tasks, all your Rabbit's doing is just keeping track of that. And so you can have one task call another task. And so it'd be one large queue because of Rabbit. So if you want multiple queues, you would want multiple Rabbits.
Like you can add more tasks to this. Like for example, we only have one, but you can put multitude of different tasks. And you can also determine how many workers you want to. So each worker can do a different job if you need to do it. It's just a matter of how you want to do it. Is there a particular reason why you would want more than one queue? I mean, I guess that's the biggest question. Like maybe you just make a bigger queue to do more things at once and have more workers. The broker, that is a great question. That is outside my scope of knowledge of Celery and yeah.
That handles the messaging.
That triggers. In this scenario, yeah, I believe so. Yes, yes.
Is there a way to get a call back to find out if the task was successful, or to get an error message back through the callback, or it's more like a file and forget thing?
So that's a great question. So remember when I was going through my code and I was doing like .ready to see if it was running or not. There's also other ones other functions you can call to see other data too. So the .ready just tells us if it's still running or if it's done, and .get actually gives you details back. So if something I was seeing a lot when I was building my demo was it was throwing like errors and like NPEs and stuff like that when I was going through. So if you do the .get, it'll actually send back that whole chunk of error data, so you can actually go, oh, stuff was happening. Also, if you want to, when you're running your Celery, you can like, I had that debug level, the logs level on, and see what's going wrong too.
I think we'll take one more question. Is there anybody other unique questions? We'll have you take that offline with them because I'm trying to get as many people as I can.
So I have two questions actually. The first one is, does the Celery workers talk to each other, like sharing some resources? And the second one is about Python's global interlock, global interpreter lock. So would in any aspect that constrain the Celery performance?
Okay, so the first question was, do the tasks can they talk to each other? They're on their own separate threads, so they don't. Actually, it just really reminds me of like this morning's talk with Raymond in regards to that. And the second question about the global scope in Python, I'm not 100% sure. So that's something that we will look into.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and give a round of applause to James and Jessica for the presentation.